Sophie and the Ark of Emonglia. Chapter 4. Arrested Rationality. In a blink of an eye, Sophie and Max were back at the Meadow of Contemplation. The flash of light that had carried them from the wise wombat's lair flickered out and disappeared into the ground. They were alone. No rationality, no confusion, not even the dreaded Turtle Cocoa Pan spaceship that was meant to send Sophie back to Earth. Just the solitary wooden signpost with its watchful nuthatch, surrounded by boundless green and vibrant wildflowers. Sophie turned to Max. "I thought this was where we were meeting them," she said, her voice taut, eyes darting around the empty meadow.
"Aye, so did I,"
Max replied, sniffing the ground, his ears twitching.
"Summat's not right here. I spy fresh paw prints and a faint whiff of fear."
Sophie crouched, her gaze following Max's lead. A myriad of tracks scattered around the base of the signpost suggested there had been a struggle. "What about rationality or confusion? Do you smell them?"
"No scent of Goldie, and the ghost has too many to track. Gets me nose all flummoxed,"
Max said, shaking his head. Sophie's chest tightened. Why would rationality leave? It didn't make sense. Not after insisting that finding the Ark was critical and that her presence here violated the ban on association rule. Unless rationality was forced. "Max, what animal leaves prints like that?" Sophie asked, staring at the clawed, inward-facing tracks.
"How would I know, Soph? I'm an urban dog, not a zookeeper," Max grumbled. "If I had to guess, I'd say sloth, small bear, or a gang of particularly adventurous badgers."
"Sloth guards!" Sophie exclaimed, the words tumbling out as realization hit her. "Max, I think rationality was taken." The thought sent a shiver down her spine. Rationality's absence eased the looming threat of being sent back to Earth, but at the same time left them stranded in an alien world with no map, no guide, and no way home. "Can you track where they went?" she asked. Max circled the signpost, sniffing furiously. After a moment, he stopped and pawed at the ground.
"The trail ends here," he said, nodding towards the motionless nuthatch, its unblinking eyes fixed on the friends.
Sophie's gaze snapped to the bird. "Of course, the local CCTV," she exclaimed. "It must have recorded what happened." She tiptoed closer to the tiny peeper perched on the lower arm of the signpost. "Do you know who took rationality?" she asked, locking eyes with it. The nuthatch stared back, indifferent and unblinking. "Of course not," she groaned. "That would be too easy."
"No use asking the beaks, Soph," Max scoffed. "Beaks don't talk."
"If you can talk, why can't the bird?" Sophie countered, inspecting the tiny red-breasted creature.
"A sheepdog is a masterpiece of creation," Max huffed. "You can't compare us to a common beak. Have you ever seen a beak fetch, roll over, or herd sheep? Their brains are the size of a puppy snack."
Sophie clenched her fists. "There must be a way to get it to talk," she said, frustration mounting.
"I have an idea,"
Max suggested, smacking his lips. "You're not eating the bird," Sophie snapped. "It's our only lead."
"I can list at least 3 reasons," Max began,
but suddenly stopped, his gaze fixing on a juniper bush behind the Crossroads of Eternity signpost.
"Wait here, Soph. Don't move," he warned,
and leapt into the dense foliage in a flurry of barks and snarls. Silence fell. Moments later, the bushes stirred, and Max emerged, dragging Fear's limp form by the throat. Sophie gasped. "Did you?" She paused, the words too terrible to speak.
"Course not," Max panted,
releasing Fear gently onto the ground.
"Found it like this."
Sophie stared at the motionless body, its limp form a tangle of limbs and ragged maroon fabric. The figure that had once loomed over her nightmares suddenly looked pitiful and small. She swallowed hard and whispered, "Is it dead?"
"Truth be told, lassie, I'm not sure it was ever alive," Max replied.
Sophie sank to her knees, her gaze fixed on fear's still form. "I've spent so much of my life bonded to fear," she murmured, her voice trembling. "It's always controlled me. Truth be told, I don't know what I'm supposed to do now that it's dead." Max settled beside her, his warm eyes steady.
"Ever wonder why dogs don't have human problems?" he said softly, his tail wagging. "Because we all start from love, which leaves no room for fear. There's a nifty acronym for it," he added. "Love is giving a crap. Compassion, respect, acceptance, and lending a paw when it's needed. Once that truly gives a crap about yourself and others, there's no room for fear."
Sophie looked at him in awe. The words stirred something deep in her mind, a memory of the wise wombat saying, "If you want to experience change, you must first choose to change your experience." She recalled the writing on the grey tablet. Fate presents no fear. Death presents no worry. The word fear had been capitalized, something she had dismissed at the time, but now, in context, it made perfect sense. Fear was not dead. "Start from love, huh?" Sophie murmured, kneeling beside Fear's listless body. Gently, she felt for a pulse, her fingers tracing the cold, clammy flesh of its 5 arms.
"What are thou doing, Soph?" Max barked, his fur bristling with alarm.
"Showing compassion," she replied, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. "Acting out of love, not fear. Giving a crap." She carefully placed Fear's last arm next to its torso, then, fighting back the nausea, pressed her fingers against the bare artery of its neck.
"Yuck! When I said to go on a limb with crap, I meant emotionally," Max exclaimed, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Not literally fondling a corpse."
"I know exactly what you meant," she replied, her gaze fixed on Fear's chest. Taking a deep breath, she reached into the gaping cavity of its ribcage. The sticky, lukewarm flesh enveloped her forearm as she searched for a heart.
"Son of a beagle," Max yelped, pacing in agitation. "I'm not allowed to sniff on walkies, and that rolling in giblets like pig in muck."
"I can't believe I'm doing this either," Sophie muttered, her stomach churning. "But I can't live in fear anymore."
"Then thou should probably start by getting that paws out of its ribcage," Max pleaded.
Sophie nodded. "As soon as I get its heart going. Fear needs our help, and we need fear." Not just because it was a potential witness, but because it was the only one among them with any working knowledge of Emonglia. Sophie plunged her hand into the mess of organs, her fingers brushing against something slick and yielding. Finally, the heart. She gave it a firm pump, and a fountain of viscous scarlet goo erupted all over her pajamas. "Blast!" she yelled, yanking her hand out. "I think I may have ruptured Fear's heart."
"At least thy paw is out of the brisket basket," Max replied dryly.
"You don't understand. I don't want Fear dead," Sophie urged, her voice trembling with desperation. "I want it alive so I can stare into its eyes and say, I am no longer afraid. If I can't accept fear, I'll always be trapped by everything it's made me do and everything it's ever stopped me from doing." Max tilted his head, his tail wagging faintly as if to comfort her.
"Well, if thou gives up after one fail, thou might as well not start," he said. "Failure's just a stepping stone to success, Soph. Try again. Maybe this time with its pancreas.
Sophie took a deep breath, steeling her nerves. She was about to plunge her hand back into Fia's ribcage when a raucous caw of a passing crow echoed through the clearing.
Extra! Extra! Virtue Rationality arrested for stealing the Ark. Read all about it only in the Morning Crow,
squawked the bird, swooping down from the sky.
Holy colly,
Max yelped, nearly tumbling over in excitement.
Beaks do talk around these parts.
Hey, wait up, Sophie shouted to the bird, springing to her feet. What did you say about rationality?
Morning Crow,
announced the bird, perching itself on the higher of the two signpost arms, right above the eerie nuthatch.
Good morning.
Only because you haven't seen what we have today, she said, forcing a polite smile at the feathery crow reporter. Tell us more about the news story, she urged.
Front page sensation! Rationality arrested on suspicion of stealing the Ark. Read all about it only in the Morning Crow,
chirped the crow. Sophie's mind erupted with questions. There was so much she wanted to ask, but the monochrome bird could only tweet in curt, attention-grabbing headlines.
Breaking news! The prosecution intends to push for the harshest punishment and exile Rationality to the Forest of Why. Extra, extra! Read all about it only in the Morning Crow.
Having exhausted its reserves of sensationalism, the crow flew off, without so much as a goodbye. Don't go! I still have so many questions, Sophie called after it. But the bird had already disappeared behind a distant tree line. A sudden shuffling behind her snapped Sophie's attention back to the clearing. She spun around and froze. Golden light rippled through Fia's shattered body, stitching its mangled form back together. Sophie staggered back, gripping Max's dog collar tightly. Her heart pounded in her chest as Fia's hollow eyes ignited with a crimson glow.
Like and subscribe to join the adventure, and check out the links below for more magic.